And welcome to Together Unlocked, coming to you today from London and Birmingham. I'm Ju Gosling from Canning Town in London. With me is Julie Newman. We'll do some fuller introductions in a minute, but over to Sutton Coldfield.
Yeah, good afternoon, and I'm Robin Surgener, member of the board of Together and artist in my own right under the name of Angry Fish.
And I'm Josh Surgener. I'm a PhD student and host of Together TV.
And we very much welcome you here today to our virtual sofa in our homes. We've got four of us living in isolation. Well, in fact, in London, we have two of us plus five cats and two assistance dogs. And I believe in the Midlands, there's a family of four in isolation with two cats. Before we go any further, just for people who can't see us, a little bit of audio description. I'm in my late 50s. I've got short red headed hair, although of course it's growing out as we speak, with black framed glasses. I've got a faded green t-shirt and it's got a sort of logo in pink that is sort of split up but is supposed to say equal. And behind us, we have the very wonderful Together 2012 banner created in 2014 with the help of a company called Graffiti Life. And it's got representations of everything we do as a disabled led arts organisation. So we do poetry, and there's a poetry book, there's masks because we do drama. There's cameras because we do film and photography. There's glitter balls because we do dancing, and so on and so forth. So now I'm going to pass the microphone over to Julie Newman, artist and chair of Together 2012, and she's just going to tell us a little bit more about what she looks like and is wearing.
Hi, I'm Julie. Got silver and gold hair, dark glasses, and a dark navy blue. I had to check the colour then. Polo shirt.
I'm Josh Surgener. I've got light blonde hair and I'm wearing a maroon Sheffield Hallam University t-shirt.
And that's because you should be at Sheffield Hallam University, isn't it?
Yes, I should be, but unfortunately not able to get there at the moment. So.
Don't worry, we are utilising his intellect by helping him support his sister who has just gone back to school in year 8, and he's being a very good big brother.
We're going to be hearing lots more as the series progresses from young people who are still struggling with school and college. We spoke to Eve Smith, I think, last week or the week before, and she's going to be joining us again. And I think Emily EJ, when she's got time from her school, is going to tell us all about how it is for them in isolation and some fun things to do to try and get away from your parents. So, on the show today, we usually start on a Wednesday by having a bit of a poetry talk. Together 2012 is an organisation that was set up, I always say by accident, but that's not quite true. We ran under the auspices of the UK Disabled People's Council a volunteer led festival in 2012 in East London just to connect the whole local community with the Paralympics. And somewhat to our surprise, we were asked to carry on and not just run festival type events like film festivals and exhibitions, performances, workshops, but people wanted us something all year round. So, usually on a Monday to Friday morning, we have free creative workshops led by disabled artists aimed at disabled people and whoever they want to bring with them. And on a Wednesday, we would have poetry, which we keep saying, and we are trying very hard. We will be relaunching as a phone group as soon as we can get technology working properly, where we pay all of the costs, because the last thing we want under lockdown is people running their phone out of credit. Robin, I think at this point you were going to tell us a little bit more from last week about how you write poems and maybe read us an example.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I should add that, just sort of touching on a little bit about the history of Together before I go into that, is that And we have to remember the tenacity of both Ju and Julie, that have now moved, with lots of other people's help, and I was there occasionally, from being a project-funded organisation, which means everything kind of goes for a bit and then stops again, to becoming what's called a national portfolio organisation, which sounds really posh, but what it means is that we have funding to run for 4 years and run whatever within reason. We run a program. The host of programs comes under the core funding that we do.
And I think that's a really good time to say thank you so much to everybody who plays the lottery. We started off, in fact, with no money at all, which of course always makes life easy because then you don't have to worry about cuts. Everything is a bonus, and everything since 2012 has been a bonus. But we had a little bit of money from the NHS, in fact, in 2012. And by the end of 2013, you're quite right, the Arts Council was supporting the artistic programme in terms of an enhanced programme to encourage and showcase disabled artists in the summer, which we call the Summer Together programme. We take part usually in street art and carnival and all sorts of other things. And we have a month-long festival in Disability History Month. This year will be no different, it will just be virtual. But we were very fortunate last year that we were able to get funding from the Lottery Community Fund. And that's helped us bring in 3 other part time artists to help coordinate and run that. So we have somebody to lead what we call our clubs programme in the morning. A wonderful international artist who's based in Stratford called Alison Marchant. We have a young artist who, again, is also already working internationally called Hazel Brill. She's local as well. And recently joining us, we have Noel, who's doing our engagement support and indeed will be joining us in the future to talk about some of the sources of help that people can get, because there's a lot of help out there if you need it, whether it's food, power vouchers, all sorts of other things. I think there's a real gap at the moment between people just not being able to get hold of what's out there because there is a big offer. But yeah, I mean, I was saying to our lottery officer yesterday, in fact, that if it hadn't been for the lottery funding, we simply couldn't be running anything at the moment. And it has just made all the difference in the world. We have a full join in from home program on our website, which this show is there to support. And indeed, our Join In From Home Poetry Challenge is to write a poem on the subject of together and to send it to us to read out on the show, and also to include in an anthology in the autumn. So thanks for that, Robin, but I'll let you carry on talking about poetry now.
Okay, great. So I've been a poet, I guess, since junior school. I think I always tried stuff. But then really as a teenager, and as sort of an adolescent, my frustrations, anxieties, disappointments, as well as achievements and pleasures, kind of fueled the need to be able to let these feelings out. And I think that, you know, for a lot of people, things boil up inside them, and they're not able to let them out, or have never been told. I mean, I have been running now for about 12 years, maybe even a bit longer, a kind of my own little baby program, which is called Permission to Speak, which, whilst it sounds ridiculous to those of us that are empowered, there are still tens of thousands of people out there who don't believe it is okay to say how they think. We talked a little bit about the social model the other day, and for those people who don't really understand the social model, don't live it, a lot of people still carry the burden of their impairment within them and see what they can't do as the barrier to participation in society. And I guess for me, you know, if you know, at 14 and 15 and 16, when you were being told that you wouldn't do this, you couldn't do that, you weren't going to get a job, you're never going to have kids, you won't own a house, you'll live, whatever it was always, you can't do that. So I turned to using the words that I know in my head, put them together to say how I felt, and it's incredibly empowering for me, and releasing. I kind of, there's another big word, emancipating, but it's kind of like a freedom from the internal burdens and the anxieties that I had. I was able to write them down on a piece of paper, and sometimes, I'd scribble it really hard, and sometimes it would just be a series of expletives or swear words, on a page or whatever it was. But it was that kind of really emotional delivery of words out of me. And then as I got better, I learned to put them into sentences that made sense, and other people could were then, and I don't mean from a swearing point of view, but I mean, in a way that people could listen to, and I could read out as poetry that was acceptable.
I think that's such an important point because, yeah, I think all of us have got things we need to express at the moment, and the cheapest possible thing you can do is pick up a pen and scribble on the back of a piece of used paper. It really isn't something that you need huge resources to do. Everything we do is inclusive of all disabled people. So that includes people with mental health difficulties, people with learning difficulties. So our poetry group has a very wide range of abilities, and sometimes people have come in and just written one word, and that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
The other thing people don't always realize is, particularly if they come into a group that's been running for years now, that's where people are now isn't where they started off. It's like anything, you don't get good straight away. It's all about the working. So I don't think anybody out there should feel that they can't write. They absolutely can. So yeah, that's a really helpful starting point. So sorry to interrupt. Do carry on.
Well, yeah, and I guess I've gone on, so and I was talking about that a lot of the so that's the start point, that kind of emotional outpouring, and then as I progressed, I mean, whether I have ever got good is, that's other people's perceptions, really. But I learned to be able to change those thoughts into presenting them as stories, or I don't know, plays or whatever they are. So that there is most of the poems and most of the songs that's in my poetry then became lyric writing, or a bit of both. And actually, I think most of my songs are poems that I've made music to. I may have written them to music, but they're still kind of at their heart are poems. And it's just that way of kind of being able to put ideas across that have kind of I think my dad always told me it was Mark Twain that said the way to tell a story is you start at the beginning. You tell them you tell them what you're going to tell them, then you tell them, and then you told them what you've told them. Kind of, I like to think of it as like a lot of the time, particularly if I'm writing poetry that is about society and people, whether it's in or out of the social model or whatever, is that I like to have a resolution. I will present an argument, which often from the disabled person's perspective is, yeah, man, cool. And from the non-disabled person is like, oh, you're challenging me. And then the idea is, as you go through, is that what you're trying to do is from the disabled person's perspective, to continue to celebrate who you are and take recognition from the things that are being put on the page or being spoken. But in doing so, you are, I sound like a pedant, don't I? But in doing so, you are trying also to have some influence on how the non-disabled world sort of communicates and relates to what is the world of disabled people. Now, it is only one world, of course, but you wouldn't always know that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the issues for so many people. People just don't see disabled people out there. For anybody who's not aware or indeed hasn't seen the show recently, the social model is very much a perspective that says it's normal to be disabled. We're all a unique mixture of abilities. They vary from day to day and throughout our lives. And what's normal, what isn't normal, is to treat us as if we were aliens and kind of this shouldn't be happening. And therefore, to, for example, build buildings that don't have ramps, they only have steps, when lots of the population can't walk properly and never will be able to. It's interesting just how much realization there's been over the last 3 months of how many millions of us there are out there that fall into that category. And I think it's also been very reassuring that people have actually started caring in a way that perhaps, you know, all of these social care stories in the past, there's been all sorts of issues with social care, but all of a sudden people are really understanding, I think, for the first time what social care means, and the fact that it's something that does affect every family and every household. These things aren't kind of completely separate. But we see very strange media representations, and I don't think until I'd been working with Together 2012 that I'd quite understood just how absent images of ordinary disabled people are. If I go to the local shopping centre, it'll be a long time till I do that again. But if I go down to Beckton to Galleons Reach or up to Stratford Centre, there's just loads and loads of people with wheelchairs and walking sticks and canes and so on and so forth. But if I look on the TV at a picture of a shopping centre, none of those people seem to exist. So, yeah, I think images are really important, and we're very much welcoming when people are sending us their artwork. I remember being at the Liberty Festival, which is run by, or was run by, the Mayor of London in the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park, and somebody bringing their daughter along who was about 4, and she felt like she was the only wheelchair user in the world, and she just got such a kick out of seeing so many of us, including, I think, me in a hard hat and power wheelchair, steaming around in charge of stuff. So, yeah, I think it's important that we remember that, because, of course, for all of us, it's entirely normal to be disabled. So, did you want to read us one of your poems before we move on again, Robin?
I will, and it kind of fits really quite nicely into what we've been talking about. It's not the shortest of poems, so forgive me. And there is a bit where I tell you as if you would be joining in live if this was, you know, be joining in a kind of chorus if we were doing this in a live setting. So it's called Inalienable Rights. So, as I bounce through my world, I find everything is topsy-turvy. I'm reminded of the fact that there is indeed a tremendous, nay, terrible need to hurry. That people are all around me are utterly oblivious to the impending social, moral Armageddon. Maybe not so at the moment. So stupefying in its enormity, so mind-bogglingly heinous that it nullifies jokes about politicians being penises. We are being homogenized, assimilated. The Borg is coming together. Sorry, only understood if you're one of the initiated. But the Borg is a Boris, a mortifying Mordant, an E for evil McVeigh, preying on the vulnerable, who make them feel just so uncomfortable. A failure to identify with the result of the population census. They can't believe that people like us they can't believe that people feel like this. It's absurdly incredulous, and so much more hyperbole, a facade to camouflage the outrageous hypocrisy that lines the pockets of the powerful with the profits from austerity. So to keep my sanity and my serenity from imploding, I created this little ditty we can join in together in solidarity. And your chorus goes something like this. I've got my rights and they are completely sustainable, sanctioned by the UN as simply inalienable. You can't shoot me because I'm black or beat me up because I'm disabled, because the European Convention on Human Rights has been completely enabled. It's very easy to sing, I promise. Of course, resting on one's laurels is a foolhardy state of reconciliation. It needs to be etched on our minds, inked into our epidermis. We are a fiscal calculation, not a burden, nor a drain, nor social capital, but a profiteering margin for personal edification, riding the crest of the wave of human commodification. Apparently, we opted out of a single currency. It was a lie. We've been commissioned as people, converted into monetary literacy, appointed our value in pounds and pence where morality is worthless, humanity and irrelevancy. The decay that erodes at the heart of our society has got to be arrested, reversed, upturned, banished to obscurity. A thing of the past, replaced by hope, equality, and a commitment to diversity. To lift the presence of culture and eradicate hate is the basis on which our future hinges. To remove disempowerment, to put people first, our ultimate challenge. And so, to keep my sanity and my serenity from completely exploding, I've created this little ditty. We can join in together in solidarity. You ready, Josh? I've got my rights and they are completely sustainable, sanctioned by the UN as simply inalienable. You can't shoot me because I'm black or beat me up because I'm disabled, because the European Convention on Human Rights has been completely enabled. We're good at this. Yeah, there we go. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think we might leave it there, but I think also again, just to say for anybody who doesn't know Together 2012, our motto is "Together we are strong, together we can change our world," and that's very much about working with all of the non-disabled people in our lives and our community as well. So this is, please be assured, neither this nor our Join In From Home programme is just for disabled people, but for once it is led by us. So we're going to move on a little bit and talk about the world around us. On a Wednesday, we usually reflect a bit on what's going on outside from our very limited perspective. And one of the things we do is we send Julie's assistant's dog out into my yard with a GoPro to see what the world outside looks like. It was raining here yesterday, but not today. But I believe it's raining with you.
It was earlier. I'm going to look out. Oh, yes, it's still pretty glum here.
I think we've got our rain and your rain. I think.
Well, that's okay. I mean, I think at least it makes you feel better about being indoors when you. And also, it means you don't worry so much about the garden because you know water's coming down.
In fact, something I wrote the other day was I actually miss the rain currently as well, which is really weird because we're not going out in it.
Okay, so this is a very short film, and for anybody who can't see, we have two assistants dogs with us in the G90 studios. My dog Jazz and Julie's dog Precious. They're litter mates and they're Westie Poodle crosses. So they're sort of, at the moment, particularly little scruffy black dogs. Precious has been wearing the GoPro harness, and all she's really doing each week is going out of the dog flap, having a look around my very small but I think quite pretty yard, because it's got shrubs around the outside, it's got lots of plants in pots, it's got a little herb garden made out of old bricks from a storage heater, and it's got a green parasol in the middle. It's also got a shed that she tends to spend quite a lot of time looking at, but I think actually because it was still a bit damp, she wasn't actually out for very long today. Let's have a look. So here's Judy trying to make her go out the flat. And she's thinking, oh, I'm not really sure about that. Crash into the garden, but at least the camera's stayed upright this week. So she's having a little look round, a bit suspicious of the sky. Oh my goodness, there might be a little bit of damp on the ground. So we're not really seeing much apart from the parasol, the outside of the terraced cottage. There's a little bit of ladder over there. She's actually in front of her little plastic sand pit, which is surrounded by yucca plants that actually belong to my friend Karen, if she's watching this show today. But yes, I think Julia's saying it's been turned into a mini pond with rain. And she seems remarkably kind of unwilling to actually do anything. We just saw a flash of her brother there. But yeah, she obviously thinks it's far too damp to do anything than just sit outside the flat. Oh, and then put her brother back in. So we didn't learn a huge amount about the outside world from that, but it is better to see it through a dog's eyes than not at all. And because the yards are so small, it's not really possible to go out into the garden and do social distancing at the same time. Have you had any encounters with the outside world in the last week?
Oh well, actually, so our cats are Emily's really, and they treat her like she is their monarch. And I was taking her to bed last night because she still likes that. She might be 13, but it's nice to Dad gives a back massage. But anyway, so we're in there, and all of a sudden there's this noise, and we've learned this noise is we've bought you a present, and literally the cat came in. You could hear her coming, and then she stopped outside Emily's bedroom door, and then just left a mouse for her. So it was the outside world coming in at that point.
That's so kind of them, isn't it?
Yeah,
Really
yeah.
kind. I had a horrible experience at Christmas actually, where I'd bought the cats various toys, and I think I'd been there on Christmas Eve, and because the cats tend to live in the studio, I'd put the little toy mouses out, and Julie gave me a lift back on Boxing Day night to have a look at everything. And I thought, I don't remember buying that mouse. Reached out, and I have no idea how it got in or where it came from, but it was the gift that, I gave them a mouse. They give me a mouse. Happy Christmas.
Absolutely.
Yeah, another reminder that there are worse things than being in lockdown.
Yeah. Mauled by a cat.
So at this point, we tend to move on because it's Wednesday and talk a little bit about what sport is still available, if given that nothing's actually happening live, and also gaming. And we play for our Paralympic medal to see whose teddy bear has the right to wear the medal. So we'll come on to that. We'll start with some chat, but I just wanted to
Can you get me hot snot?
Here's Joey the Bear with her medal that she had last week, because we as London 2012 won the sprint against what we describe as Birmingham 2020.
Yeah.
But Joey's retiring now.
Oh, well, hot snot is returning because he's feeling aggrieved.
He's going to keep coming back each week till he's won the
Yeah,
medal.
yeah. That's perseverance. Sport and lockdown is all about perseverance.
And relaxation and a whole bunch of other But so this bear is Ed, and Ed came from the Edinburgh Festival in about over a decade ago anyway, when I took my exhibition called Abnormal up to the Edinburgh Festival. So this is Ed. So Ed will be playing later for this week's right to wear a medal. But Josh, let's hear from a young person and not all the old fogies. Tell us a bit more about what you've got in terms of sport and games for us today.
Yes, there's been a few kind of articles that have come out over the past kind of few days. Obviously, there was kind of in the news yesterday around that potentially if the Olympics and Paralympics can't happen next year, that they'll just kind of be scrapped.
Yeah, I mean, because you're both Paralympic coaches and Robin's a former gold medalist, what do you think the implications are from that? I mean, I just looked at it from a really selfish point of view, which is that our wheelchair dance company are due to be playing in the Paralympic handover flame ceremony in Aylesbury, and I was thinking, oh, 1 minute it's postponed for a year, and then it's might not happen at all. But if you're an athlete, it's clearly, really shocking.
I mean, you can.
Yeah. I mean,
As someone that's been there.
Yeah, I mean, I think having not been selected for games at a point when I think I should have been, at least I was then able to kind of put my fires towards training for the next games, because at that point I was only 16, you know. But for some people, Japan may have been their one and only opportunity to take part in an Olympics or a Paralympics, you know. And it's you hear of all these, you know, people like me and Sarah Story and Tanya Gray Thompson, who did 3 or 4 or even 5 Paralympic games or whatever, you know, and Steve Redgrave did 5. But actually, the common experience is you don't get anywhere near an Olympic Games. but for those that do, the common experience still is generally 1 games, 2 if you're really, really good, you know, and getting to 3, for example, like I think Phelps has done 5.
Cool.
But anyway, I mean, generally, you know, a lot of people, most Olympians become, you know, single games competitors. So actually, if Japan was going to be your only chance and it doesn't happen next year, I think it will be, yeah, I mean, I think it'll be really sad for a lot of people. I mean, not to mention Japan. You know, I mean, I said to Josh when we saw it on the news, I said, well, why couldn't they just put the whole cycle back? Oh God, I'm doing that symbol thing again. Take, you know, put it, you know, and do Japan in 2024 and Paris in 28 and LA in 32. You know, shift it on block. I mean, that was just us talking in the lounge. Obviously, the IOC weren't earwigging on, as far as I know. But yeah, it does. I think, you know, and
Well, of
yeah,
course,
just
we've sat through the kind of build up in East London, and you know, Julie, you were involved in the delivery authority, weren't you, in terms of the planning and so on? I mean, you know, a year beforehand, you know, you were in a very sort of particular position. So I'm just getting a very strange thing coming up on the screen that I really want to get rid of at this end,
yeah,
which is actually the help department from the live stream. But sort of flashing away like they're about to give somebody a seizure. So sorry, Josh, do carry on.
No, I think kind of what you were saying around, you know, kind of selection and things, and around kind of the Japanese people, but kind of Japanese athletes. One of the things that you get when you host the games, is you get an automatic qualification spot for everything, which is why in 2012 we all of a sudden had handball teams and things that we've never played before and aren't particularly great at. You know,
apologies to all handballers.
Yes, in terms of an international standard, anyway. But you know, for those athletes that maybe do sports that aren't necessarily funded or get the kind of media coverage, the opportunity then, you know, in front of a home crowd to, you know, walk out and say, you know, this is me, this is my sport. All of a sudden, you know, if it doesn't happen, isn't there. And you know, if you talk to anybody that competed in London, or anyone that, you know, competing at their home games, it doesn't compare to anything else. It's a whole nother level. And a slightly more kind of optimistic story around the postponement. There's an article that came out a few days ago, interviewing Sky Brown, who is a 11-year-old skateboarder, who was on course to be Britain's youngest ever Olympian in Tokyo, and then with the postponement, she won't be, unfortunately. And she said, well, I'll just have to set a target of being the youngest gold medalist then. Which I thought was just kind of a wonderful piece of just, you know, 11-year-old kind of endless optimism. I can't be the youngest, I'll just have to be the youngest winner then instead. And I just thought it was some great positivity, kind of given the times that we're in. So
Mind you, easier to be positive at 11 than 30
Well, yes,
with
but
the games. Something that is going ahead is the Paralympic Art Cup, which I'm not aware that actually happened in London 2012, but we've been in correspondence with Japan. They're still very keen to run it as they would have run it for this autumn. So we're going to be posting some stuff up about that. And I think we'll come back to that again next month because yet again, it sort of shows that relationship between sport and the art, but at least the art can carry on. But yeah, I think it's a very nobody could pretend it's a kind of wholly positive experience to be part of a community that's hosting the games. But I think to have all of that disruption and then not have the games. So yeah, I think we're all hoping for. I don't think it would take a miracle. I think it would just take a lot of hard work from now on to still have them in Japan. But I think, I feel very, very sorry for, yeah, everybody involved and not, like you say, not least the Japanese. Outside of the Paralympics and Olympics, what's going on, Josh?
In terms of kind of gaming and things, on our personal experience, Emily and I are big fans of the Lego games, and we've just started a new game. So as well as helping her with her homework, I feel obliged to help her with her downtime as well. So
You mean convince her to have some?
Yes, yeah, obviously. I can drag her away from work and persuade her to sit in front of the Xbox. That's going to be a good kind of 30, 40 hours of
What's the game?
it's Lego DC Villains. But yeah, I think there's the Lego games are really simple, and yes, they are children's games. But they're some of my favourite games, and they're just really good fun. There's lots of kind of very silly jokes and things, and
And what platforms are they available for? Are there any that you can just Lego games that you can get that just run on a computer?
yeah, you can get them on PC, Xbox, PlayStation. Some of them are available on smartphones and tablets. I believe
That's
there's
really
Star Wars games. Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Oh yeah, I was just saying that was really helpful to know because of course we've talked before on a Wednesday about people not having the consoles but still having access to smartphones or laptops, certainly in order to be able to access this show.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think they're all available on kind of PCs or laptops. Some of them are available on kind of smartphones as well. And then in terms of just kind of other games, we've been trying to kind of play some more kind of tabletop things as well, just to try and get some family time in when we're all kind of we're both working from home and Emily started school again now, just to kind of get some time away from screens as well, just to kind of let your eyes relax a little bit.
I mean, there are some things. I mean, I think it's rock something. There is, so you can get, like, there are musical games, and you can get the one where you get a plastic guitar with buttons on it and play. But there is an Xbox game.
Rock Band.
No, rock. I'll get him to look quick. But that literally that you get an additional lead, and if you have an electric guitar, you plug it in to the Xbox, and then it reads the note. It recognizes the notes you're playing, and then you can actually learn to play Rocksmith. There you go, Rocksmith. Not the cheapest, but if you do want to learn guitar, probably by the time you've paid for that, you'd only get about 3 guitar lessons. So, and it's something very different. Sorry.
Yeah, I think one of the things that a lot of people have said is, that lockdown's giving them time to sort of pick up that guitar in the corner of the room that they bought, and they bought a book, and it never got much further than that. And as we said last week, if you've always wanted to learn the guitar and haven't got one, you can get a very nice sounding ukulele still delivered by post for less than £20. And because they've only got 4 strings, they're also easier to play, but they're a good step up. And I think a really good alternative. So you're right, if you've already got the guitar and you've got the Xbox, this is a wonderful time to go for it. And do send us your music. We'll be playing a music video a little bit later. But I'm just thinking before we carry on, let's see which bear is going to wear the medal today.
Right.
And to explain to viewers who've just joined us, we're far too competitive, well, certainly at the Midlands end, to have no sport at all. So, what we're doing is racing toys. We're also sort of mashing that up with the virtual teddy bear hunt that is going on around the world. So, thus, we have teddy bears, which we hope you can at least glimpse some of the time. Our teddy bear plays for the right to wear a plastic gold medal that the Mayor of Newham gave out to people who were doing things during London 2012. Your household has a massive choice of medals, so if it's your go, you can tell us which medal it's going to be.
Yeah, well, we are with, as I said, Hot Snot, for those who weren't there on last Wednesday, he's determined that he wants to win a CP World Games gold medal. So we are going to endeavour.
Well, we'll just have to keep him going. I have in the G90 studio, partly because it was set up in the 90s when all of us computer geeks did that kind of thing. I have a large collection of Clockwork toys, which we have been racing and videoing. I had all sorts going on this morning, but they weren't racing very satisfactorily, not even the racing nuns. So I've gone back to my racing grannies in their power wheelchairs, and you have a choice of red or blue.
I'm going blue. Sticking with blue.
Right, so just bear with me, everybody. I'm going to show this in the stream. And more to the point, I need to be able to play it. Here we go.
Yes.
That was blue.
Yes. Yes. Winning is a habit. That's all I can say.
And bear with me, and I will just.
Yay! Hot Snot wins.
Oh, well, you know what? I think Ed can manage without, because we're that kind of family.
Yeah.
So, moving swiftly on, do we have any more sport or games to chat about? Anything else to recommend?
Not in terms of kind of recommendations, but I know we've kind of talked a lot about hobbies and trying to picking up things that you've maybe left or haven't had time to do, and that's all. That's great. I think one of the things that people have kind of struggled with, and I know it's something I've struggled with as well, is kind of getting the motivation to do things at the moment. Just when you are just stuck inside, it can feel the days can kind of merge together, and I think if you do kind of wake up one day and you suddenly feel like you just really today's just not the day, don't see that as a negative. It's okay to have a day where you are just a bit, especially when the weather's like it is at the moment. And in kind of bringing it back to sport, there was an interview with Michael Phelps a couple of days ago. For those that don't know, the most successful Olympian of all time.
And he's a swimmer, isn't he?
He's a swimmer. Went to 5 Olympic Games, has won 27 Olympic medals or 28 Olympic medals. You have to have huge levels of self-motivation and drive to be the best in the world for 15 years. And he said, you know, at the moment, sometimes he just wakes up and just can't get the motivation to go and do his workout or to go and do the work that he has to do today. And I think, you know, if someone like that is, you know, every now and again feeling a little bit glum, everybody else is as well. You know, and it's not a negative thing to do that, but it's an opportunity to see that and then overcome it rather than let that kind of spiral down.
And I was going to say, sorry, Jude, that the way I'm starting to do it is, you know, is actually just to think about today. What can I do today? You know, you know, or maybe it will be go as far as tomorrow, you know, but actually have that plan, decide what you're going to have to eat. You know, it's actually helped at the moment because with Emily back at school, then I've got to get up anyway, so I don't have the, you know, I'm not even sure it is a luxury being able to lie in. It's almost in some ways it's almost you know, is an oppressive tool as many other things. But just those little things are, you know, what do I need to do? I need to get my guitars tidied up. You know, I need to do some paperwork. I need to do direct payment wages. I need to do, you know, just and take each little bit rather than kind of some, you know, 4 weeks ago I was like, right, house is going to be cleaned down, the loft's going to be emptied, it's going to be blah blah, you know, and it's like, yeah, right, okay. Whereas now it's actually just kind of giving you those things, those little jobs, and take each one as a victory.
Yeah, and I think it's a really important thing anyway. I mean, the message we had from Jade Simpari with her dressing up to go out to stay in video, of which more in a minute, last Friday, was don't rush. And I was reading in the papers this morning that in some cases, you know, certain mental health conditions are actually improving because we lead such unnaturally pressured lives. I mean, I think for me, I know that I'm going to chat with you and other people on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 3 to 4 p.m. together unlocked. Little plug for that. We've made Saturday chores day because we still don't have the masks and gloves we would need to let our support workers in. And Sunday is spa day, where even if I don't get round to sticking some henna on my hair, then at least I know I've got to brush the dogs and brush the cats and do different things for the cats and dogs. And it just gives us a little bit of structure. But I think you're absolutely right. You know, that kind of just knowing what you have to get through that day is absolutely fine. And having to, actually booking time out. I mean, we're trying to book at least half of Sunday and a good chunk of Saturday just to sit and chill. But we've also made it into a cinema thing where we put films on. And yeah, I think there's nothing worse than doing nothing but not enjoying doing nothing is. And
Yeah.
it's good to, whether you're sticking on some music, TV, gaming, scribbling a poem, because sometimes it's just good to get those feelings out. Yeah, a little bit of structure, but absolutely not rushing. So I wanted to move us on a little bit, going back to our Join In From Home program. So the website, as you may well be watching this show from it, but if not, the website is together2012.org.uk. And on the main menu, probably about the second or third along the top menu, you will see a link called Join In From Home. Join In From Home is then split around the different clubs that we organise. So there's art club activities, there's poetry activities, there's film activities, there's family activities because we usually run a family activities day every school holiday. And there's also some targeted youth together sessions. So there's 2 different Facebook groups and an Instagram thing to explore. Within our music club activity, we've got 2 strands, and one of them is making percussion instruments from recycled materials, but the other is actually tactile sound. And Julie, I wondered if you could just quickly say about when we first came across tactile sound in Canada and met the lovely David Bobier.
We were in Canada for for a conference. Jew was invited as a guest speaker, and I went along because I wanted to go. And we met David, who introduced his. He's got a workshop who had been producing these vests and cushions and things like that, where if you touch them, they vibrated with the sound, so that you could plug in your. Well, he had an iPhone, and he plugged in his iPhone, and he pulled out his music and turned it on, and you could actually feel it.
Yeah, and in fact, what you use, as we have since discovered, is something called an exciter. An exciter is like a little speaker that you would put inside your loudspeaker for any kind of system, but it vibrates at the same time. So we stayed in touch with David, and he was over. Well, I think there's lots more funding for artists in every country in the world other than the UK, but he's been very good at getting money to come over. So he did a presentation in East London in 2014, and everybody loved it. So in 2017, we were fortunate enough to get some funding from the British Council in Canada, and we had a 2-year joint project to develop these different designs and showcase them together. So we developed cushions which were based on a laptop bag design. We developed these tabards, which are really like a waistcoat you put over your head, but you can wear with the vibrational surface either on the front or the back. And amazingly to me, we developed these balls of polystyrene, which you would think polystyrene really damped sound down, but you can hear every little note sort of vibrating through in an incredibly delicate way. So we have the link to all of those designs. For this is really, I hesitate to say dads, particularly since I'm the engineer for Together. But this is the kind of project where if you've got a lot of time at home and enough money to order a few bits and pieces of electronics off the internet, it's a really interesting thing to build. And just before everything happened with coronavirus, we were applying to the Wellcome Trust for something called an Innovator Award, because one of the young people we were working with who has cystic fibrosis realized that it was actually helping him to cough up the mucus from his lungs. So that's been kind of put on hold. But in the meantime, I'm about to build some new designs that are, for example, you can clean down with bleach without destroying the exciters, because that again is the world we live in now. If you want to swap something around, you really need to be able to clean it first. So we had a joint symposium in London and Montreal, it was, although David's based in Ontario, back in December 2018. And then one of the artists who comes and plays at our music club, and we've programmed before, Joanne Cox, who's a local cellist, we supported her to get an Arts Council project grant to start developing it into light. So Jo did a fabulous project last year where she embedded a kind of personal storytelling about her life with live electric cello playing and these lights that reacted in different colours. And Jo and I are now going to sort of look at what we can do with that on the internet. In the live show, what they did is they had the cushions and jackets, and people could come up onto the stage and experience the sound through that, as well as seeing lights and holding lights. So we're doing a bit of experimenting with VJ software at the same time as I'm experimenting with building new designs. And what I'd like to show us now is Jo's been doing some wonderful live streams from home where she's got some of these lights and she's hung them in the window. So I thought we would all enjoy just seeing a bit of what Joanne Cox is doing. So that was the very wonderful Joanne Cox. And on our Together Unlocked highlights gallery, we will put up the full version, which I think is about 5 or 8 minutes. So you can see, I mean, I'd love to be one of her neighbours.
Yeah, I was just say to Josh, we've got a sound to light bar. I might just try that with my electric guitar and see if it has the same effect.
Well, absolutely. I believe the name of the lighting designer that Joanne Cox worked with last year was Charles Matthews, and he came and we did 2 workshops as part of our Summer Together 2019 program. And one of them, Joanne came in and people could wear the vibrational equipment, which was playing out the sound, but people were painting to it. So it was kind of what color is sound.
Yeah.
One, Charles brought over all sorts of funny little things that you could hold in your hand, all sorts of different things that lit up. I mean, Julie's actually been one of our leads in terms of the participatory work, and I think we'll come back to that another time because we've got some. In fact, if you look at the links to the Vibrations website, which you kind of follow that trail through the Join In with the Music Club, there's a whole bunch of fascinating examples of different people's work and workshop footage with David Bobier. If you're interested, I mean, it's the kind of thing we called it our digital arts project because the Arts Council were prioritising digital arts, but really it's just old fashioned audio technology. So, there's no electronic engineering at all. It's all really about connecting loudspeaker cables and plugging things in. So we're getting to the end of today's show. Before we go, we just wanted to plug that on Friday is our dressing up to go out to stay in day. So we all wear somewhat ridiculous outfits, maybe ridiculous, maybe not, depends on your perspective. But the idea is you choose an occasion or an activity, real or fictional, to dress up for. Send us your photos and your videos, and we will screen them on the show. You might want to go to the moon, you might want to go to the bottom of the sea, you might want to go on holiday, wouldn't we all? Or you might just wish you could get to the supermarket, and that's really just as difficult and impossible. But we'd love to see you dressing up to go out to stay in pictures. We'd love to see any kind of artwork that you're doing from home, whether it's part of our Join In From Home program activities or not. We'd love to hear your music. We'd like to hear your news. You can use live chat to communicate with us. But in the meantime, it's a goodbye from Julie and I in London. And
Yes, goodbye from Sutton Coldfield, from Josh and I. See you Friday.
See ya.
to seeing you Friday.